Stavros, in your opinion, do you think it's fair that our countries are on stall waiting for the results on the Greek negotiations with Europe and with Germany?
You want to answer before my speech?
No, you can take it off.
Okay, so first of all I want to thank Agir for the invitation. In my speech I will present you in a few words my experience for this period of crisis in Greece, a brief analysis of the elections result, and also the main points of Syriza's program. After 1974 and the colonel's dictatorship, Greece was governed by two political parties, the Conservative Party of New Democracy and the Socialist Party of PASOK. These two parties, for many years, had almost the same neoliberal politics, and for the 5 last years of economical crisis, they had exactly the same politics of austerity measures against the Greek people. This deep crisis, as you know, has not only economical and social consequences, but also political. The main political consequence is the creation of the fascist party of Golden Dawn, who grew up and now became the third political power in Greece. At the national elections on June 2012, the Conservative Party won the elections and finally governed together with PASOK for 2.5 years. At the elections of 2012, fear won hope. The Grexit from Eurozone and the possibility of coming back in drachma terrified the voters. In the 2015 elections, spreading economic and social insecurity among the electorate was once again the main axis of the two governing parties' election campaign. It was the new campaign of fear. The adoption and legitimization of the far-right agenda, the attempt to exploit xenophobic tendencies, and the effort to link immigration to the terrorist attack in France simply didn't work. In complete contrast with the prosperity of the figures, most people's financial situation has not improved. Finally, debt negotiation constitutes a key point in the social agenda of the elections and became a decisive voting criterion for the choice of party. The vast majority of public opinion was not convinced about the viability of Greece's debt. At the elections of 2015, the Greek people didn't have something to lose. They understood that this politic was destructive for them, for their families, and for the next generations. It was absolutely necessary to have another political alternative for their country, and Syriza was the only one. This time, the propagandistic attempts from New Democracy and PASOK couldn't change the electoral support to Syriza. Syriza won the elections with a very specific program, using two powerful political messages. The one was, for the first time, left, and the other was, the hope is coming. The 25th of January was an historical day for the Greek nation. The Greek people wanted a great political change, and this time they voted for hope and against fear. With the elections of 25th January ends the 5-year cycle of the memorandum period in Greece. This led to the collapse of the two old party system, New Democracy and PASOK, and thrust the radical left to the forefront of the political stage for the first time. After 40 years, the Greek political system entered in a new phase. Today, the big majority of Greek people, and not only the voters of Syriza, support the government and his effort to negotiate, but at the same time they have many expectations. 2 months after the elections, the situation is always difficult. The negotiations are tough, but they are based in a much better frame than before. Every Greek citizen understands that this is the first time that the Greek government has a true discussion with Troika. We really believe that this government will keep his promises and will finally succeed. The Greek government is negotiating and is working towards building the broadest possible alliances in Europe. Now I want to give you a brief analysis of the result of recent national elections. I think that that can help you a lot. Between 2012 and 2015, voter support for Syriza grew markedly by 9.5%, from 26.9% on 2012 to 36.3% on 2015. But the variations in the social composition of the vote for Syriza, as revealed by the most recent election result, have greater political importance. For the first time, to such a degree, a broad social alliance has been formed against the policy of austerity. A social analysis of the vote illustrates that Syriza remains the party that primarily represents the strata of salaried workers who were severely hit by the memorandum, and of the unemployed whose ranks were swelled by the economic recession. The party's relationships of representation with this strata have stabilized. At the same time, Syriza's social base expanded significantly to include other segments of the population negatively affected by the crisis. This applies not only to the agricultural and traditional segments of the lower middle class, but also to groups within the economically inactive population, pensioners and housewives, which the party had been unable to attract in 2012. In all the socio-economic categories, Syriza increased its social resonance. More specifically, Syriza retained its overwhelming electoral strength, which it had already secured among public sector salaried employees, private sector salaried employees, the unemployed and students. The increase in support for the party is greater among public sector employees, of course. It also emerged from the analysis of the election result that the social base of the anti-memorandum alliance with Syriza has grown markedly. Today, its electoral support extends, in addition to the majority of salary earners and the unemployed, to sizable segments of the country's productive population, which are being economically and socially devastated by the memorandum, including employers and entrepreneurs, whose focus is on the domestic market, self-employed professionals, the traditional lower middle class with small-scale ownership in production and commerce, like small manufacturers and small traders, and the agricultural strata. Pensioners are nevertheless the only category in which New Democracy was ahead of Syriza, and they are New Democracy's electoral life raft because they account over 1/3 of the electorate. It's the 32% of the Greek electorate in the last elections. As we said, the growth of voter support for Syriza has brought, relative to 2012, a major upset in the social characteristic of its electoral support. Syriza is becoming more of a people's party. On the basis of educational level, the greatest increase in its support is among primary education graduates, which completely reverses the escalation of the party's resonance with the society. Today, the social alliance that has been formed against Greek neoliberalism is extremely broad. The polarization within Greek society caused by the memorandum has been clearly reflected in the vote. There are strong indications that the class characteristics of this polarization have become even stronger. Syriza's greatest increase in support was recorded in the lower social class, in the middle and lower middle classes. In the vote for Syriza by age, the best age group is the most productive and dynamic age of 45 to 54, and then group 55 to 64, and the young people aged 18 to 24. The only age group which Syriza was lower than New Democracy is the group 65 plus. Syriza had an impressive rise in rural areas, which corresponds exactly with the increased support among farmers, and indeed slightly exceeding its support in urban centers. On the basis of assessment of household income, the increase among those voters who are facing difficulties is double that of those reporting that they are getting by financially. Now I want to mention the main points of Syriza's program. It was the points before the elections from Thessaloniki Conference, which can give another political alternative for Greece and probably for other European countries like Portugal and Spain, who have many common problems. The program is proposing a set of policies oriented towards reversing austerity measures while maintaining a balanced budget. The goal of the government Syriza in coalition with the anti-austerity right-wing independent Greeks, is the immediate realization of the program, a national reconstruction plan that will replace the memorandum and exit from the crisis. At the European level, the program demands a European New Deal of large-scale public investment by the European Investment Bank, extended quantitative easing by the European Central Bank, and a European Conference for the reduction of Greek and Southern European debt modelled on the London Debt Agreement of 1953. Domestically, the program sets out a national reconstruction plan based on the rebuilding and extending of the welfare state and the strengthening of democratic institutions alongside the implementation of forms of direct democracy. These policies would be financed through revenues raised by combating tax evasion and appropriating European funds from bodies such as the Structural Funds and Cohesion Fund. More specifically, the government's goal is to write off the greater part of public debt's nominal value so that it becomes sustainable. It happened for Germany in 1953. It can also happen for the south of Europe and Greece. To include a growth clause in the repayment of the remaining part so that it is growth financed and not budget financed. To include a significant grace period, a moratorium, in debt servicing to save funds for growth. To exclude public investment from the restrictions of the Stability and Growth Pact, to declare that the issue of the Nazi occupation forced loan from the Bank of Greece is open and this will become the country's official position. The government has already done something for that. On the basis of this plan, the government will fight and secure a socially viable solution to Greece's debt problem so that the country is able to pay off the remaining debt from the creation of new wealth and not from primary surpluses with deprived society of income. With that plan, the government will lead with security the country to recovery and productive reconstruction by immediately increasing public investment, gradually reversing all the memorandum injustices, gradually restoring salaries and pensions so as to increase consumption and demand, providing small and medium-sized enterprises with incentives for employment and subsidizing the energy cost of interest in exchange for an employment and environmental clause. Also investing in knowledge, research and new technology in order to have young scientists who have been massively emigrating over the last years back home. And rebuilding the welfare state, restoring the rule of law and creating a meritocratic state. Now I'm finishing with a few words about the National Reconstruction Plan, which is based on 4 major pillars. The first pillar is to confront the humanitarian crisis. It includes a grid of emergency interventions so as to raise a shield of protection for the most vulnerable social strata. In that first pillar there are some interventions. Syriza already, it's the first law in the Greek parliament that they have voted 3 days ago. It's the first law of the new government. The second, if you want, I can tell you some of these interventions, but they haven't voted exactly like that. This is because this was the program of Thessaloniki. Or I can continue to the other pillars.
You can continue.
Okay. The second pillar is to restart the economy and promoting tax justice. Priority is given to alleviating tax suppression on the real economy, relieving citizens of financial burdens, injecting liquidity and enhancing demand. Excessive taxation on the middle class as well as on those who do not tax evade has entrapped a great part of citizens in a situation which directly threatens their employment status, their private property no matter how small, and even their physical existence as proved by the unprecedented number in suicides. The third pillar is to regain employment. A net increase in jobs by 300,000 in all sectors of the economy, private, public and social, is expected to be the effect of the plan to regain employment. Such a plan is indispensable for absorbing the long-term unemployed, particularly those of over 55 years, as well as the young unemployed, who would be largely bypassed by economic growth. The plan would save funds to expand unemployment insurance to more beneficiaries. The last and fourth pillar is to transform the political system to deepen democracy. The government sets in motion the process for the institutional and democratic reconstruction of the state, empowers the institutions of representative democracy, and introduces new institutions of direct democracy. For example, the regional organization of the state with enhancement of transparency, of the economic autonomy, and the effective operation of municipalities and regions, and the empowerment of citizens' democratic participation with the introduction of new institutions such as People's Legislative Initiative, People's Veto, and People's Initiative to call a referendum.
Very well.